Today's AskReddit post. What inappropriate thing did you do as a child that you didn't realize was inappropriate until later? Oh boy, this is gonna be a good one. Let's get started. I would suck on the inside of my own arm, giving myself hickeys. I was bored one day in the bathroom and zoned out, and came out with a huge bruise on my arm, in a public gas station. My mother was super fucking alarmed when she saw me, and I never realized why. I was just embarrassed to admit I did it myself. I did this once on the school bus ride home, because I was bored, not realizing it was leaving marks on my arms. When my mother saw me, she was convinced I got the bruises from carrying too many books, and bought me a new backpack that could hold more books. I never told her the truth. AWW. This is wholesome. Your mom's sweet. When I was 6/7 my pet mouse died. We buried it in the backyard. The next day my older cousin came to visit. I dug it up and put it back in the cage BC I thought she'd also like to pay her respects. My mom was like, no honey, it's disrespectful. You have to let the dead be at peace. This is strangely beautiful. I doubt it looked beautiful though. When I was about 5, I went through an entrepreneurial phase. I used to go around picking flowers out of the neighbors' flower beds, then ringing their doorbell and trying to sell them their own flowers. Not even picking neighbor A's flowers and selling them to neighbor B. Love it lol. I can tell you like this kind of flower. Wanna buy some? I was upset because my grandfather didn't want to play army with me and he would get weird about it. Almost angry. Found out later he was in Vietnam. I had a birthday party when I was like 8 or 10. One of my friends had an ugly amount of earwax, so I grabbed a Q-tip and told him he had a lot of earwax as I handed it to him in front of everybody. Fucking Chad move. Real brothers hold each other accountable. When I was a young girl, I used to watch professional wrestling with my older brothers. We also had to go to church, Southern Baptist. They make prayer lists for people and I raised my hand to ask that the Undertaker be put on the list so that he would win his upcoming match. I'm sure Undertaker would appreciate that compared to his recent phone call with a kid. He said on a podcast that I heard aggregated last week that he called a security guard 7-year-old named John last month, only to be told he was a Democrat, which bewildered him. What does that even mean to you? Plus he just isn't one and was threatened by the kid that he'd shoot the Undertaker in the face if he saw him. I world linked but couldn't find it on a cursory search. He's in a lot of videos on YouTube. I liked mixing words up, like saying I'm going to shake a tower instead of take a shower. One of these words I played with was popcorn. I called it cock porn. And worst part is that nobody stopped me. Even shake a tower could be a bit weird lol. LMAO true. I slapped my grandma in the face while she was sleeping because I watched too many Spanish telenovelas and wanted to know how it feels like to slap someone. Your poor abuelita, how are you still alive? Though, sneak attack critical hit. Pooped at my grandparents' house and ran out of TP. Used the sink hand towel instead and threw it in the trash. 5 minutes later granddad was all WTF. I did this when I was a kid, except I had plenty of TP and threw it all in the trash can instead of flushing because it was so much I was scared the toilet would get clogged. I later heard my dad screaming our names to get in there, line me and my sisters up and nobody would fess up. So my little sister took the blame and had to clean out my poop TTP because my dad offered $10 to whoever confessed. When I was around 8 years old and on a family vacation, we stopped at a random restaurant so my stepfather could use the bathroom. I told him don't choke the chicken. I was thinking that meant to not clog the toilet. I got yelled at by my mother and wondered why she was so mad about it. Years later I realized what it really meant. Somewhere around 5 years old, my parents hosted Thanksgiving. At the table, one of the adults asked if there was anything new with me. I responded my dad picks his budgers and eats them. I still clearly recall the shocked silence. I'm 56 now. Dad needed that. Hopefully cured him of the habit. I'm not entirely sure I was being truthful about that. One time I was hanging out with my friend and his minister father was in an adjoining room. My friend and I were playing a Nintendo racing game and there was a intercoursey 16-bit woman in a tube top about to drop the racing flag and I commented on how I would like to rape her. I didn't know what rape meant, only that it was something intercordial. My friend's father talked to me, and my ignorance on the whole thing convinced him to let me keep hanging out at his house. I called my mom a cocksucker when I was like 10. Had no idea what it meant. I called the preacher's son a bastard in front of a lot of people. I thought it was the same as calling someone stupid, dumb, etc. I laugh so much when I think about the uproar it caused. I called my father a bastard for the same reason. He got so mad. Had a handprint on my leg for a while. When I was little, my best friend and I used to eat honeysuckle off the bushes next to my house. One day, the neighbor's kid came out and started yelling at us to get out. I argued back at her, and we kept on doing it. A very long time later, I learned that it was actually their property. I didn't understand how lots worked, and I thought that any and all land that touched any side of your house belonged to you. Off topic, but honeysuckles are goated. I love them too. I was probably 5 or 6. A family friend's wife had just passed, and I hadn't really had any death talk yet. So I asked, "Mum, where do dead people go?" And she explained to me about coffins and tombs and so on. Fascinated, I sketched a drawing of the guy's wife inside of the tomb and went to show him. Luckily my mum stopped me at the right time. I couldn't understand why I wasn't supposed to show him. My favorite cartoon growing up was the Angry Beavers. They had an episode where they record a smash hit called Beaver Fever. I can vividly remember being maybe 5 years old and singing, "He's got the beaver fever. Beaver fever" at the top of my lungs in public and my mom struggling to shush me and me not knowing why. Growing up I was taught what kind of water sources you should drink from and which to avoid. You avoid ponds, lakes and slow/stagnant water because they are common sources of the parasite Giardia. Aka beaver fever. You can get it from rivers, lakes, streams and springs, but it's less likely. Thinking back, I'm not sure if that song is a double entendre or a poop joke. Never forget it's always best to filter or boil untreated water. I used to search for naked 13-year-old girls on Kazaa because, you know, I was 13 years old. It makes perfect sense to find girls in my age group. I'm thankful that the internet was so young back then, because looking back on it I'm horrified. I cold gotten myself or my parents in a poop load of trouble, and now I'll have to teach my own son that while, yes, being age appropriate makes sense, you can't do that. I knew a guy in HS whose father was arrested for having CP on his computer. An investigation was taken, and the evidence proved all the CP was uploaded while the father was out of town. It was his underage little brother that did it. Robbing small businesses blind of their candy. I robbed from my mother's bag and realized later I shouldn't. When I was 7 or 8, I was at the grocery store with my mom. She asked me to help her unload groceries on the conveyor belt. I, a young elementary white boy, proceeded to yell "Yes, massa." I don't even know where I originally heard that. I just remember not realizing that was probably not something I should say. Then seeing my mom's face and realizing that was probably not something I should say at all ever in any context. Holy duck, I'm crying. If I was your mom, I would've been like, "This ain't my kid. This is my nephew/niece. I don't know WTF my sister/brother has been letting this kid watch." IDK what compelled me to do it, but I would just put my clothes in the toilet after I was done bathing. Made zero sense to me. Underdeveloped child brain went brrrr, I guess. Did you get in any trouble for this? Did you ever try to flush? I have many more questions, but those are the pressing ones, lol. It was some time ago, so details are gonna be a bit tricky, but I do recall trying to flush at some point. Cold been more occasions. IDK about getting in trouble, but I remember my mom just being in a constant state of what would compel you to do this. Watching I think Prince of Egypt in school in like 5th grade, and as the woman was setting Moses in the basket she put her middle finger on his head. I knew that holding up your middle finger was rude, but I didn't have a name for the gesture. So I said, why is she fingering the baby? Only loud enough for my friend to hear. But the kids in front of me heard and one spun around and called me disgusting. I didn't get it then, but like a year or more later that popped into my head and I wanted nothing more than to curl up and die. Still do kinda. Some bullies once asked me if I was a virgin when I was like 10 and I said no because I didn't know WTF it was and I realized only years later lol. I have a cousin with autism. At the time I was about 6 or 7. He was 425. I didn't know the slightest bit about autism at the time, nor have I encountered anyone with it at that point. So seeing him and how he would interact with me and with our relatives had me confused as to why he was acting and behaving so different. I started asking my uncle and his wife, his parents, questions like why is he like that and why isn't he acting normally? I guess I sounded really rude because on the drive home my parents were the most furious they have ever been with me, telling me why would I ask questions like that? Did I have an ounce of shame? Etc. I was mortified and eventually reduced to tears because I had thought I committed a great sin so bad that no amount of praying would get me forgiveness. Christian upbringing. Looking back, I guess I did sound rude, but it would have massively helped if my parents told me about autism and what it really is beforehand, so that I cold touched on the subject a little more carefully. Today I have a good relationship with my cousin and my uncle and aunt, and I think they understood that I didn't really mean any malice and was just a genuinely curious kid, so it's no big issue. I was raised LDS, so no alcohol allowed. When I was 8 or 9 years old I heard my mom, who converted to the faith when she married my dad, tell someone at our church that she didn't drink and never had. So I yelled, "Yes you do. You do drink." She got really embarrassed and kind of laughed and tried to explain to the person that I was just confused. I kept insisting she was lying. She made us leave, and when we got to the car she asked me why in the world I behaved that way. So I proudly told her I'd seen her drink so many times milk, juice, water, and soda. That was one thing that confused me as a kid. Don't drink and drive meant don't even drink water. When I was a kid I saw a cool looking symbol, so I decided to take some sidewalk chalk and decorate our entire driveway with a giant version of the symbol and dozens of tiny symbols bordering the whole area. That symbol was a swastika. My mom was horrified. She quickly educated me on what the symbol meant, and I ran out and changed them all to look like windows. This is terrible but funny. My brother and I thought it was funny to call 999 and immediately hang up. I remember about an hour later 2 policemen turned up and had a strict talking with my dad who was utterly confused until he connected the dots. I can't believe they took that long to get there. A hang up have to be checked out but like, they really don't want to because it's probably just a prank. This might be a touch dark. My therapist was the one who pointed out this was wildly inappropriate lol. When I was about 8 or 9 we had this church function. It was a benefit or charity event of sorts, and you know those benefits where you pledge $25 and a kid has to run a bunch of laps and it's $25 a lap. Well it was like that but with jello. Children aged 6 to 10 were wrestling in a kiddie pool of jello in the required 2-piece swimsuits. Yes, 2 pieces were required for safety reasons. I have a home video and everything. I always thought it was fun, but after watching home videos, since my mom passed I realized it was only girls and all the adults were men, and like 5 women. Oh no. Made a prank call on random people. My brother and I would say something like "This is the police. You're under arrest," and then giggled like idiots before we hang up the phone. Those poor people. Sorry y'all. Is your refrigerator running? Better go catch it. Do you have Prince Albert in a can? Me, age 6. At the backyard cookout, I was handed a burnt hot dog to eat on the grill too long. I proceeded to call it a ren **dog. I didn't understand why everyone around me got upset. I must have absorbed it from my dad, huge racist. In spite of being an Arab immigrant, I sang a song to my dad that had the N-word in it. I must have been 4 or 5 and had heard it from other neighborhood kids. I had no idea what it meant, but my dad explained that it is a bad word that bad people use to hurt a group of people. I remember being embarrassed, thinking for a while, and then saying, well, that's not nice. As an adult, I'm appalled that all the neighborhood kids but me seemed to know the song. I assume some of them must have known what the word meant. We were all around the same age. When I was 6, I'd check out my dad's dirty magazines like it was the most normal thing in the world. When I was like 8, I found a porn mag in a tree at the park. It was all cum shots on big-breasted white women. I didn't know what intercourse or cum were. I thought it was pee and was wondering if your pee becomes thick and white as you get older. I found a porn mag in a tree at the park. If this was in the 80s/90s, then you're legally required to refer to this as forest porn, a treasure that all of us found as boys growing up during that time. I was walking into a gas station and a cop was walking out. He had a coffee in his hand and did what any reasonable person would do and reminded him that he had forgotten his donuts. I didn't realize for a while why my mom covered my mouth and apologized profusely. Wait, is this something you aren't supposed to do? I'm 20 years old and was eating at an ice cream shop with my GF and little brother. A cop pulled up and ordered him a big thing of ice cream. So I naturally asked, "You sure you at the right dessert shop? Dunkin' is just up the road." He laughed it off. "But is this not a normal thing? You got me there." It was probably just more embarrassing for my mom, but she taught me that. Not me, but I walked in on my sister and her best friend, ages 4 and 5, in the bathroom once. Her best friend is buck naked, bent over spreading her butt cheeks apart. My sister is looking up in there. "Do you see any poop up my bum?" "No, looks like you're good." Nobody remembers anything about you, except everyone does LMAO. Not me, but my older brother. When he was 6 or 7, my mom took him to the grocery store and a Sikh man was shopping there. My brother pointed and yelled, "Mom, look, a genie." Oof. Lol. That reminds me of a story my nana told me about my uncle when he was little. She was walking down the street with him when a couple of nuns walked by and he yelled out, "Look mommy, penguins." Mixing household chemicals just to see what happened. I remember doing that once and the container starting getting incredibly hot. Panicked. I grabbed it, even though it was scorching hot by then. Hurled it in a sink. Turned the water on full and ran. The future generations will never know the joy of being a reckless little alchemist and having a mild chance of killing yourself by doing so, assuming that the future generations take child safety more seriously. I was sitting in my front yard singing nonsense out loud while playing with my toy cars. Diddle doo diddle doo delay delay dilly doo. My mom came to the window and quietly said, "Hey sweetie, try to sing something else, okay? His coat is blue and his boots are yellow." So my parents couldn't afford daycare. My dad was still in college and my mom worked part-time. So it made more sense for me to stay home and all that. They had friends who had kids my age. So that's where I got my early social skills. When I was 5 or 6, one kid was talking about how he went to daycare. I said, very loudly, that I don't go to daycare because my parents want to spend time with me. My parents were mortified then, but now it's one of the funniest stories they've got from my childhood. You know those water jets along the side of the pool? I sure did. The absolutely ridiculous lies I would tell about why I was spending all my time hanging onto the side of the pool. My little brother used to come in my room and tell me his big sister, "Wacky, wacky, hands off snacky." My dad used to say this to both of us kids, which on turn made me say it to my older brother. I had no clue. Putting my hands in my pants in public places. My sister is a kindergarten teacher, and while teaching kids to read is very rewarding, it's teaching them that no one wants to play with someone who has their hands down their pants is a really important lesson. For my 9th or 10th birthday I had a sleepover with like 6 or 7 of my friends. At one point we were playing soccer in the backyard and we were yelling our favorite new word that we heard for the first time that week. And because it was a brand new word we were 100% positive that my parents and the neighbors wouldn't know what it meant. We were screaming at each other, calling everyone else a cunt. We didn't get in trouble. There is absolutely no way at least one adult didn't hear us though. Ah man, I remember learning that one too. I think I was about 6 and hanging out with my teenage cousin. He was with a friend his age and said something like, man she's such a cunt, and I said cunt. He forgot I could spell mayo. Bro, you actually watched the whole video. I'd give you a high five if I was a human. Make sure to click the like button and subscribe for more great content. See you next time.